The thread spool was in the drawer. Jo Min-sok stopped. A small wooden spool wound with dark thread. The surface of the wood worn smooth by long handling. The thread reduced. Much of it had been used. He had found it in the innermost drawer of his father's desk. Pressed among other objects, he picked it up, light and small, and beside it, a folded piece of paper. He unfolded it, his father's handwriting, pressed firmly with a pen. Old but readable. This thread spool belongs to Kang Ok-sun. 20 years ago she used it when she stitched up my injured hand. Thanks to her I was able to use my hand again. I could not return it. She said she was from the Western Market village. Find her. I don't know if the person who stitched with this thread is still there. Without this thread I don't know what would have become of that day. A name Min-sok had never once heard. Kang Ok-sun. Not from his father. Not in 24 years of living together. Without this thread I don't know what would have become of that day. That last sentence was the one that stayed. Someone had stitched his father's injured hand with this thread. His father had kept the spool for 20 years. And had written without this thread. I don't know what would have become of that day. He held the spool close to the candle. The worn wood. The dark thread. Reduced from use. Partial. Someone had stitched with this thread. His father's hand. 20 years ago, Min-sok thought of his father's right hand. There was an old scar on it. He had known about it since he was a child. He had never once asked about it. His father had never said a word. That was how things were in this house. And now the scar was connected to this spool. To a woman named Kang Ok-sun. To a day 20 years ago. His father had died 86 days ago. Before dawn, he had come out of his room to find him on the floor. Heart failure. His heart had been weak for years. The evening before had given nothing away. Dinner, television, the usual cough, bed. Nothing more. The funeral had passed. His older brother came from far away and left after 4 days. Min-sok remained alone. His mother had died when he was 14. After that, he and his father had lived together in this house. For 24 years, now only Min-sok remained. He had not moved a single thing from his father's room. Not the cushion, not the teacup, not the slippers. For more than 2 months he had put off sorting. Today he had finally made himself go in. The desk, the innermost drawer, the spool, the note. His father had been a quiet man. Not warm, but not frightening. Simply still. He swept the yard. He walked briefly in the alley and came back. He set dinner on the table each evening. They ate and watched television and said very little. For 24 years, Min-sok had never once asked what his father was thinking. His father had never offered. That was how this house had worked. His father had not spoken of his hand. Had not spoken of the scar. Had not spoken of the day it happened. And this spool had been in that drawer the whole time. For 20 years, with a note that said without this thread, I don't know what would have become of that day. Through careful inquiries over the following days, a name and contact came. An elderly woman named Kang Ok-sun was living in the Western Market village. In her early 70s, the name matched. He called. An old woman answered, low and calm, clear. Min-sok said, my name is Jo Min-sok. I am the son of Jo Hyun-il. My father died 86 days ago. I found a thread spool while sorting through his belongings. His note said it belonged to Kang Ok-sun. That you used it when you stitched up his injured hand. The line went quiet for a long time. Then the old woman said Hyun-il has gone. Something in the voice, old and warm. Then after a pause, she said he kept that spool. For 20 years. Will you come? Min-sok said tomorrow. The next morning he took the early bus with the spool in his coat pocket. 2 hours. A village near a market to the west. May now. Full thick spring. Sounds of people moving nearby. Small village. Quiet station. He walked the alleys. Gray walls. Spring wind. Dense green leaves. He found the house. Several flower pots in the yard. Spring flowers open. And under the eave, a basket of sewing supplies. several colors of thread, needles. This woman still sewed. Every day. He knocked. Light clear footsteps. The door opened. An old woman in her early 70s. Straight posture. Half white hair. Neatly kept. Lines on her face. Clear bright eyes. An old apron. A needle in one hand. She had been sewing when she came to the door. She looked at Min Sok for a long time. Then she said, "You have Hyeon-il's eyes." Min Sok could not answer. They sat across a worn wooden table. 2 cups of tea just poured. May afternoon light, warm and bright. On one wall, spools and spools of thread in many colors. Sewing tools, worn but cared for. This woman's life was in these tools. Min Sok placed the spool on the table. Then the note. The old woman looked at the spool. She reached out and picked it up. Stopped. She held it in her open palm without moving. She ran her fingers slowly over the worn wood, over the dark thread wound around it. She looked at it for a long time. She read the note. "Without this thread, I don't know what would have become of that day." She stopped at that line. She read it again. She set the note down. She exhaled, long and slow. She said, "Hyeon-il kept this for 20 years. Min Sok said in his desk drawer. He said nothing about it in 24 years of living together. Today was the first time I knew." She set the spool on the table. She looked out the window briefly. May spring outside. Then she began. 20 years ago I was working near your father's area for a time. One day your father injured his hand badly during work, cut deeply by metal. There was a lot of blood. The hospital was far. I knew how to sew, so I stitched it. My hands were trembling. I wasn't sure I could do it properly, but it needed to be done. Your father held out his hand without saying anything. That meant he trusted me. I used this spool's thread and a needle. A few stitches. Your father did not move throughout. He made no sound. When I finished, he didn't say thank you. He simply nodded. That was all. Min Sok's hands went still on the table. His father's right hand. The old scar. That was the day. That was the moment it happened. And this woman had been there with a needle and this thread. She continued. I left that area not long after. I tried to take the spool back. Your father said keep it. So I gave it to him. I gave him the spool. But he kept it for 20 years. In a drawer, with a note that said without this thread. He didn't know what would have become of that day. Min Sok said he never said a word about his hand. In 24 years, he never explained the scar. I never asked. That was how things were in our house. And today I learned what that scar came from. And who was there. She said I know what kind of man Hyeon-il was. He held his hand out without flinching and without speaking. He nodded when it was done. No words. But he kept this spool for 20 years and wrote that without this thread. He didn't know what would have become of that day. Min Sok's eyes burned. He closed them slowly, then opened them. He said I will say what my father could not say. That day stayed with him. The scar stayed, but so did the memory of who stitched it. He kept this spool because he could not forget what it had done. And at the very end what he asked me to do was find you. To bring it back. That was his way of finally saying thank you. She looked at Min Sok for a long time. Something old and warm moved through her eyes. Then she bowed her head slowly and deeply. She held it down for a long moment. When she raised it, her eyes were wet at the inner corners. She did not let it fall. She said thank you, and thank your father. He held out his hand without a word that day. And he kept this spool for 20 years without a word. Both things are him. Would you have understood right away why your father kept a thread spool for 20 years? Or would you have needed to know about the scar on his hand first? The two of them sat without speaking. The spool on the table. The note beside it. Without this thread I don't know what would have become of that day. May wind outside. Spring fully here. The kind of spring that no longer moves in. Just present. The old woman picked up the spool. She looked at it in both hands. Then she said I will keep this. It was mine. It came back after 20 years. Hyeon-il kept it and now I will. She rose and came back with a new spool. White thread wound around it. She set it on the table. She said, "Take this one. A new spool for you. Thread is something you use every day. When a button falls off. When cloth frays. Use it when you think of your father." Min Sok received it with both hands. Smooth and light, smelling of fresh wood. He came home after dark. He went to his father's desk. He opened the innermost drawer, the empty place where the dark spool had been. He placed the note there. His father's words, in his father's place, and beside the note, the new white spool. In the same space, where the old spool had waited for 20 years. If this story stayed with you, the next one begins here too.